Well, let's just focus on the next bit of conversation. Are India-US ties heading for a bit of a reset? That's the question. Both leaders of India and US have tweeted at each other. President Trump first, followed by Prime Minister Modi, and then President Trump posting Prime Minister Modi on his social media platform, Truth Social. Ajay Dua is former Union Secretary, Commerce and Industry. Arpita Mukherjee is professor at Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. Mr. Dua and Ms. Mukherjee, thank you very much both for joining us here. Ms. Dua, if I can ask you this, how would you see this? This is certainly de-escalation, right? Both sides from the escalatory ladder, so to speak, now climbing down a little bit, step by step. How would you read it?
Very positively. I think we should forget what President Trump was trying to achieve in his endeavors to bring about peace between Ukraine and Russia, of which we had become a collateral damage, particularly because we didn't have the leverage which probably China and the European Union had vis-a-vis President Trump. So to that extent, that he realizes even now that there is no point going after India and putting penalties on India for having traded with Russia, and at a time when China, European Union, and the US itself was beneficiary of India's of crude oil of Russia. So I'm very delighted to see this. Let's forget what he did and tried. Let's look forward. The US is an important trading partner for us and an important strategic partner, and I look at the relationship in that context.
Okay, no, absolutely. Ms. Mukherjee, your first thoughts, and we, the stock market types, are prone to jump to conclusions, right? And well, a deal soon, round the corner. How fast can it be? Are those right questions to ask? And is there any way to know at this point? There are various times. Yesterday we had somebody who said, and we were asking this before all this happened, when do we see some sort of a deal? And the gentleman said, certainly before March, before we here in India get into the election season. So we'd certainly like to conclude it. This seems, of course, all of this now makes it much closer. What would you say?
See, basically, one thing is for sure that there is a movement in the right direction. When you look at businesses on both sides, they want a deal. Of course, India wants a fair deal, like whether we will be getting a 0 for 0 or we settle for a 0 for 15% tariff. And probably now our exporters would be happy to settle, if India gives in a 0 for a 15% tariff. You have to also see the deal comes at a time when the GST has also been reduced for many, items, and India is, so there is a domestic demand boost. At the same time, there is a trade negotiation. Now, this entire negotiation is very strategic. Now, nobody is looking at the economic interest. Like if you look at Trump, he is also not looking at the economic interest and the repercussions. And because he is just focusing on tariffs and linking tariffs to multiple other things. I think with the US also moving into a festive season, and India and Brazil moving into a festive season, and inflation rising in the US, he will gradually turn around and bring down the tariffs. And therefore, this trade agreement will be a step in the right direction.
Sure.
Coming to the core context of the trade agreement. See, now they are relaunching the trade agreement. Relaunching the trade agreement and signing the trade agreement is totally two different ball game altogether, because we also have our domestic sensitivities. But I think the 50% tariff has kind of diluted our domestic sensitivities to a lot extent, and maybe industry will be more acceptable to an FTA.
Sure.
The other part is India is also looking at European Union. Even after the FTA, European Union put a hefty tax on Google. So, it also gives brilliant ideas on, negotiating on different aspects that can happen.
No, absolutely. And by the way, I must point out here that there's a statement from the chief economic advisor. I suppose he must have been asked this question perhaps at an event, or he must be speaking at an event, and he said that India is not part of any initiative looking for an alternative currency to the US dollar. So the speak from both sides is very, very positive. Maybe it's just a reiteration, but the fact is it's been put out there in public domain, and the statements are obviously made very, very carefully. Mr. Dua, sir, so to get back to the point, the thing is till now, tariffs were not part of a trade negotiation, which can still happen. They'd become part of political brinksmanship. But now, at least if we go back to the point on trade, how do you think can the logjam be broken? Because the thing is, in most of the deals that the US has done with the rest of the world, the US hasn't given an inch. You know, it's been almost 100%. But here we go back to the sticky points: agriculture, dairy, GM crops. Do you think most of this can be resolved?
I think so. There is nothing, if the two sides are determined to come to an agreement, that things cannot be resolved. I'm a firm believer in that, and an optimist, probably an optimistic view. But I'd like to see the intention of the US to arrive at an arrangement with India by starting off with the lifting of the 25% penalty for having traded or continuing to trade with Russia in crude oil. That, I think, India should make it very clear to the United States that while we are talking about the bilateral trade agreement, and we do know that there is a 25% export duty on Indian products to the US, that is the kind of a minimum we expect the United States to do. I repeat myself, lifting of the 25% penalty on our original 25% should be imperative, and we sit down to resolve one dispute, one point of resolution, conflict, or the red lines which we or the US has, one by one. And we know that there is a 25% duty on our products. So everything which we do has to be well within that 25% outer limit.
Point taken, sir. Absolutely. And this has been the ask of the Indian side already in the past couple of weeks, that the additional 25% needs to be, revoked for real negotiations to start on trade. Very quickly, sir, one additional point. I mean, in the last few weeks, we've also seen what's the overtures with China, right? The SCO summit. Now, how do you think India will ensure it? And it's a very delicate balancing act, because there's been a lot of talk about boosting trade ties with China. And now we have to go back to, obviously, negotiations and fixing things with the US. Do you think this is going to be easier said than done?
Not really. I think China has, I must say, to China's credit, at the SCO and in the bilaterals with Prime Minister Modi, they have talked of a multipolar world. They're not talking of there being only one center of power in the world. That was what everybody looks at as the US, or there being a bipolar center in which China comes in. They've talked of the world consisting of several poles, of which India could probably be one, Russia and Brazil, or whatever we say. The question is, we want to increase our trade with China, undoubtedly, but we also do not want our trade with the US to suffer. After all, the US is our biggest trading partner today, with over $130 billion of trade, of which 86 billion was exports alone. China is the other way around. We import from China far more than our exports, and we have a $100 billion deficit with China. So the question is, we are dealing with two different things. It does not, to any extent, conflict. And I think the US itself wants to have a trading partnership with China. So why should anyone be objecting to our trade with China and the trade with the US building up simultaneously?
Oh, you're absolutely right, sir. Both of you, thank you very much. Very interesting conversation, and of course, possibilities, right? That's what we all look forward to. Appreciate it very much. We'll take a